primarily to understand this, to understand that there is a method of this enquiry. Because the one who needs help, even though we say you have to help yourself, it is very difficult in this regard to help yourself. You need help. One needs help. Why? Because I am in my own way. That is the problem. My own notions, I am falling all over myself. I am in my own way. So if I am gagged and bound, I need help. Gagged and bound and lost in the forest, I need help. This is how the 6th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad, dealing with Shvetaketu, the student, and Uddalaka, the teacher, unfolds. So there is an anecdote of a fellow who is a very successful businessman and tradesman, and then he sold his wares, and a pocket full of money, sack full of gold, was very happily returning home, and then he was set upon by robbers who bound him and then blindfolded him, gave him instant vairagya from the gold by taking away everything that belonged to him, threw him in a ditch in a forest, and then went away. And he kept saying, I'm blindfolded, I'm not gagged, otherwise he couldn't speak, I'm bound, help, I'm from Gandhara. Gandhara Pradesha is my home, I don't know how to get back home, help me. Then in the story, a good Samaritan comes, unties him, and takes the blindfold away and points him towards Gandhara Pradesha and says, keep asking and going there slowly, you will surely get your destination. Your destination will be not away from you. He says that and assures him, and then this is a metaphor for the jiva who is gagged, bound, thrown into a ditch. By what? By one's own notion. Avichara siddha, durvichara siddha, bandha. And so therefore, with the help of the good Samaritan, who in this case is the teacher, one is able to get one's bearing correctly and then go home. What is home? Om. Om is the home. And so this is what is already been talked about. And so here the next thing that is being said is what should be the topic of the enquiry. So there is tasmat. Tasmat means therefore, and it's a very heavily pregnant therefore, because therefore means what? Suddenly you can't say therefore. But thankfully we have spent a lot of time on this verse, so we know what this therefore is. Therefore means with the help of the teacher. Therefore means with all the accoutrements that one needs to calm down the mind, to have a tranquil mind, shama, dama, uparati, titiksha, shraddha, samadhanam. These are all preparatory sadhanas. Sadhanas through which I compose myself and be ready for this knowledge. For one who is discomposed or dysregulated emotionally, this knowledge will not make any sense. Why? Because they are just going up and down and on their own little journey, and they are not able to be part of this journey where this transformation can take place. So the proper attitude towards the teaching, towards the teacher, and towards the knowledge is all there in this word tasmat. All that has to be gained, all that has to be collected, and then since all these, the last 9 chapters we have not studied, so all that has already gone. And so here tasmat, he just therefore means what? Because this bondage is notional, and therefore one has to do this enquiry, because the lack of enquiry or wrong enquiry is what is leading me into this problem. And so then what is the topic of the enquiry? Jiva paratmanau, jivascha paratmacha, jiva paratmanau. The topic of enquiry is two-pronged, twofold topic of enquiry. What is the first topic? Jiva. Who is Jiva? Don't look around, Jiva. Yeah. So, Jiva. And then, what is the next topic of the enquiry? Paratma, Paramatma. Why doesn't he say Paramatma? Because as soon as you hear the word Paramatma, then there is a sense of remoteness. Para Atma, meaning that Atma which is Para, which the Atma here means I. The I that is unsurpassed by anything else. This is what is called Para Atma, referring to Ishvara. Very huge topic here of enquiry. Even writing a treatise and enquiring into the Jiva can take a whole lifetime. Why? Because talking about the Jiva, one has to talk about various complaints. This is who I am. This is my problem. Here is what I want. Here is what I'm not getting. A whole litany of complaints. One has to wade through the quicksand of complaints in order to understand who this Jiva is. So Jiva means basically individual, Paratma, total, Ishvara. So these two should be the topic of enquiry. Why? Because they are not understood. They are misunderstood, they are wrongly understood. Jiva, of course, is wrongly understood because at any given time one can think I am just a bunch of complaints, bunch of unaddressed complaints, that do not just ordinary complaints, unaddressed complaints. Nobody is listening, nobody is making room, nobody is doing this, and I am just, alone here, and I'm a victim of circumstances. This in the beginning, the place of victimhood feels like a comfortable stay. Aha, I think I'll stay here a while and sip some coffee while I'm complaining about the coffee. Yeah. Why? Poor me. Woe is me. Yeah, look, it's all everybody's fault. I'm just in this situation. I don't know how I got here. It's that one's fault, it is this one's fault. And then today being the transit point of the Jupiter, you can always make it Jupiter's fault. Yeah. That fellow, this Jupiter is in the wrong place. Jupiter is in the 8th house. That's why I'm like this. Jupiter is in debilitation. Jupiter is sitting in Capricorn. And because Jupiter is debilitated, my whole life is gone. Because Jupiter is in Capricorn. What kind of a thinking is this? Where is your free will? We don't see this. So the treatise about this unfulfillable Jiva, you can run into huge things. And the place of victimization in the beginning is very comforting. Why? I don't have to look at myself. It's the fault of the stars. It's the fault of God. It's the fault of this one. It's the fault of that one. It's all because of my childhood. My parents were crazy. It's all because of this, because of that. It's the blame game. And then after that, what happens? After that, after a little while of feeling comfortable, sipping and complaining about the coffee, then what happens? Then I start to feel lonely. Oh no, the walls are high. The walls are high. I have entombed myself in this victimization and in this victimhood of complaints. What have I done? Help! I need to get out. Let me out. And that is exactly the starting point of this vichara. Because victimhood is only good for a little while. It's comforting. And after that, it starts to eat you up. It's a very lonely place. It's an extremely lonely place. How are you going to get out of that? And so therefore, the jiva, mainly, namely myself, becomes a very important topic of enquiry. Without this enquiry, you cannot go further. Because the jiva is just alienated from everybody else because of this victimhood. Jiva is equal to complaints, jiva is equal to victimhood. And because of this victimhood and this litany of complaints, this whole wall of complaints, the darshan of Bhagavan within cannot take place. Because that is what is the deterrent. How will this knowledge, I am non-separate from this Bhagavan, can happen? It cannot happen. And so therefore, the dismantling of this wall of victimization and complaints is a very necessary part of this enquiry. We generally, in the Shastra, talk about three areas, or not areas, three portholes of enquiry, three entry points. The first entry point is, who am I? Who is this jiva? And the second, because I don't understand myself, other than someone who has been terribly wronged by everything and everybody. And this feeling of being wronged, as we said, as we saw, is a very lonely place and causes alienation. And the second point of enquiry is Jagat. What is Jagat? World, universe. The universe includes your own body, mind, sense complex. So the Jagat is the second entry point of this enquiry. And here, the Jagat also is coming to get me. I'm frightened of the Jagat. The Jiva and the Jagat, what is the relationship between the Jiva and the Jagat when the Vichara has not taken place, is one of fear and misunderstanding. And that we don't even have to, we can talk about numerous examples, but everybody knows. One is afraid of everything and everybody all the time. Oh, this person is coming, I don't know what they want from me. Let me duck under the bush. Yes. Thankfully, there are a lot of trees and bushes in the ashram. Yes. So, let me just, not be seen. God only knows what they want. And this is one way in which there is alienation from other jivas and alienation from the Jagat. Once I met this person and had a lot of sadness in his life. It was hard. He had a hard time getting over things. And I said, he said, what can I do to overcome all this pain, all this difficulty I'm having? I said, just be in nature. Just go, put your feet in the grass. I couldn't even complete my sentence. He said, I hate grass. And I said, are you allergic? Because some people are allergic. He said, no, I just don't like it. I said, just go be with the trees. I don't like trees either. I don't like anything green. I said, go in autumn. I didn't get very far with that. But this is what it is. I can understand if you're allergic to pollen or allergic to trees, grass, whatever possible. Some people have asthma, some people have other manifestations. That's okay. But here that wasn't the case. It was purely a mental reaction. Then, in another situation, I had gone on a hike. I will have questions at 8 o'clock tonight. You please write it down. Yes. So then I was on a hike one time, and you hiked up this mountain, and you were treated to this wonderful sunset. This was in California. Nice sunset. It was very nice to see that. And then just behind me there was this family struggling, heaving, breathing heavily. 2 teenage sons, husband and wife, came up. And it was very clear that she had been behind all her enthusiasm to get the family going and appreciate something. And so she came up, they all came up, and then she turned to the husband, who had a very sullen look, and she said, "Honey, isn't this magnificent?" looking at the sunset. He said, "Nah, it could have been better." The Jagat itself becomes an object of rancor, if not fear, an object of anger. And this causes again alienation. So Jiva, first entry point for the Shastra. Jagat, the second entry point. Because we can even look at the Jagat and say, where did you come from? Where did this world come from? How did this world get done? What is this world all about? And what should we do to overcome this? Jagat is the second entry point. And what is the third entry point? Ishvara. What is this thing called the Lord? Goddess? What is this thing? Where is it? And why should I relate to it? And of course, as soon as you say Ishvara, people look up. Yeah. Where is this Ishvara? Who is this Ishvara? And especially if this Ishvara is the cause of this universe, then I'm in trouble. Why? Because I am part of this universe. Ishvara is the cause of the laws of the universe. Then I am also in trouble because of all these laws of the universe are what? Out to get me. Starting with the weather, starting with so many things. Everything is very, very difficult when you bring Ishvara in. Because that makes it very difficult. There are always issues between Jiva and Ishvara. And what is that issue? It's authority issues. It's unresolved authority issues. Because Ishvara is presented in many religions as an authoritarian figure. God loves you, but be careful. Yeah. And even in the Sri Rudram, in our own tradition, Ishvara is presented at the beginning. How every jiva sees Bhagavan. How does jiva see Bhagavan? Oh no, the giver of the fruits of action, stay away from me, you. I'm afraid of you. I don't know who you are. So I go into a propitiating mode. I go into a propitiating mode because I don't want any trouble, because I don't know all the karmas that I have done, and I don't want those karmas to get me. So what do I say? Om Namo Bhagavate Rudraya Namaha. And you look kind of angry. This is my own projection. You see, this is the jiva's projection. God is angry. There is an angry God who has to be propitiated. If you look at Kala Bhairava, if you look at Mahakali, all these things, you get angry God. Rudra. The word Rudra itself, Rodayati Sarvan, makes everyone cry. Why? After giving them the fruits of their action, everybody cries. And then, what else? Rudanam Dravayati, wipes away the tears, because good karma results are also given. What kind of a Bhagavan is this? First pinches and makes me cry, and then gets one hanky and dries up my tears. This is the human imagination. It actually really works, because this is how everybody sees Bhagavan at first. Namaste Rudra Manyave. Manyave Namaha. For your anger, a big namaskara to your anger. And then look like you have a bow there. You have bow and arrows. Not only one arrow in the bow, but you have many more arrows in the quiver. And that is making me quiver. And you have this bow directed at me. Look at that. Oh my God. But look, this person, go there. Yes, this person has been terribly adharbik, I tell you, far worse than me, go there. This is how the first Anuvaka chapter of the Sri Rudram starts. A beautiful embodiment and illustration of the jiva's fear of Ishvara. It's a fear-based relationship in the beginning, because everybody has authority issues. And what are these authority issues? It's all not understanding. It's all because of non-understanding, non-resolution of early childhood impressions, trauma, connection to one's parents, etc. And it's no use saying, okay, they were like that. They were like that, but what are you going to do about it? The ball is in your court to resolve these issues. And then only one can relate to Ishvara, step number 1, and step number 2, declare that one is non-separate from Ishvara. The duality stops there. So Bhagavan or Ishvara becomes the third entry point for discussing Vedanta, for understanding Vedanta, for inquiring into Vedanta. Jiva Jagat Ishvara, because this is the Triputi, the triad, where the 3 legs of this triad don't even speak to one another. The Jiva is in a vacuum, and the Jagat is somewhere out there, out to get me. Or the Jagat is an object of consumption. I have no oneness with the Jagat. I cannot discover, even the simple basic understanding is not there for me. If I pollute the air, I have to breathe that in tomorrow. Even that connection is not there for me. So the Jagat is either an object of consumption over which I have dominion, or the Jagat is an object of fear. Wherever I go, I am afraid. Or I want to boss everything and everybody around. And then Ishvara becomes an alien object which I don't know and don't want to know either. So as I said, each of these entry points, any one you can take and then get to the place of resolving the other 2. Why? Because it's all one anyway. The separation, the so-called separation between Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara is arbitrary. It's on the Vyavaharika level. What is Vyavaharika level? The empirical level. On the Paramarthika level, on the absolute level, you do not have these distinctions. You don't have these distinctions at all. So, therefore, we have to do this inquiry, because I have a body, other people also I see having a body, and so I have to do this inquiry. Now here, there is a further twist to the plot. Any one thing I can take and do the inquiry, but here Swami Vidyaranya suggests there should be a 2-pronged simultaneous inquiry. Simultaneous inquiry into what? Into who this Jiva is and who Ishvara is. Once and for all, this inquiry has to be done, and it's a daunting inquiry, because I myself, I don't know who I am. much less Ishvara. I don't know who Ishvara is, and I don't know how to connect. Any kind of a connection is fraught with fear, like the beginning of Sri Rudram. Fortunately, the Sri Rudram does not end on that note. It ends on a note of oneness, with a powerful Namaha. Powerful word Namaha, indeclinable word. The word Namaha in the Sri Rudram comes 300 times. And in these 300 iterations of the Namaha, there is a resolution. There is a resolution of all these fears connected to Ishvara. This is something that must be really studied. Pujya Swamiji has a wonderful book. I advise everyone to read it. It's just fascinating, very beautiful book. So, Paratma has to be inquired into. And inquired means what? I have to drop that resistance and give it a chance. All that is asked for is to give Vedanta a chance. What is Vedanta? That which expounds the oneness between the so-called Ishvara and so-called Jiva. That oneness I have to give a chance. Therefore, I have to drop these authority issues, or at least suspend them as I am working on them. And that, of course, is a big sadhana, involving yoga, involving psychotherapy, involving so many other things, involving the cultivation of a tranquil mind, which is very, very important. Extremely important. That in order to drop these authority issues, I have to not water those seeds. I have to not nourish the soil where these seeds are stored. What are these seeds? Seeds of strife, seeds of fear, seeds of misunderstanding between me and authority figures in my own life. I must not water these seeds, because watering the seeds will give rise to the weeds of misunderstanding. Even one dandelion becomes a gardener's, fright. Imagine if all these seeds in the form of weeds proliferated the antahkarana, proliferated the heart, what would be the situation? And so this is very important. I take care not to water the seeds of distrust, of fear, of useless longings in myself first, because Vedanta really is an inside job. How do I not water these seeds? What do I do? When I feel like watering them, the water just comes. What do I do? If I was nourishing them consciously, I can do something about it, but most of the time it is unconscious. Sakshita, I have to get into the place of the Sakshi, the witness. In the beginning, the Sakshi might be sleeping on the job, a lazy Sakshi. Wakes up after the seeds are watered and the weeds are saying, "Tada, I'm out to get you." But with practice, the Sakshi then wakes up during the situation, not afterwards, and then later on the Sakshi is there even before the situation of the watering happens. And I don't nurture these seeds, I don't give them the time of day. I let them just get roasted in the sun and made incapable of reproducing. I do that for myself. Then I have to do the same thing for others in my life. I have to take care to not water their seeds of pain, of fear, of resistance. This is an act of compassion. This is a great act of compassion. And the compassion is in not making something even worse than what it is. The situation is already fraught. The situation is fraught because it is full of great misunderstanding. Already I am upset, and I see the other person as the cause of my upset. When I take care to not water the seeds of reactivity in me, half the battle is won. Then, as I grow, I also take care to not water the seeds of reactivity in the other person. Very beautiful, very important. How do I do that? By not reacting to what they say, what they do. Time is the greatest healer. And unfortunately, in this day and age of quick returns, including messages, instant, what are they called? Messages, SMS. By the time you type the message, you have hit the send before you have even typed it. And then you expect them to respond and react immediately. And then if it is not done, it is seen as a breach of etiquette, netiquette, whatever you want to talk it. I say brazenly breach the netiquette. Yeah. The problem is because of this instant. There is no time to think, there is no time to contemplate, there is no time to just be. We are always reacting. We are always watering the worst seeds in others. Just by talking at the wrong time, saying the wrong things, and just not taking the time to just be. So when I don't water the seeds of those issues within myself, the core issues within myself, and then when I extend that same courtesy to others, I don't water the seeds of strife, conflict, fear, and tears in others, there is a transformation happening already. This is only half the job. The other half the job is to know what kind of seeds to water. I water the seeds of response, not reaction, compassion, kindness in me, and I water the same seeds in others. One person at a time. I resolve this duality even at the empirical level. This is what one has to do with this jiva entry point. Very, very important. And if this jiva entry point is taken care of, Paramatma does not become an object of fear, because I have resolved the fear locally. And the source of the universe cannot be a cause of fear, because the source of the universe is non-separate from that consciousness which is myself alone. This is what the next verse is going to say. We can now safely go back to verse number 1 and not be frightened. Paramatma dvayananda Purnaf purvam swamayaya Swayameva jagad bhutva Pravishat jiva rupatah. Yeah, so let us see the meaning first. Paramatma, this Bhagavan, of whom I am afraid, or because of whom I am annoyed, with whom I am annoyed, who is, I just vaguely understand or not understand at all, who I think is irrelevant to my spiritual evolution, growth, etc. This Paramatma, the Shastra says, what is the nature of this Paramatma? Advayaha. What is Advayaha means? Non-dual. This Paramatma is non-dual. This itself is a huge wake-up call. Non-dual. Non-dual means non-dual from me, the one who is reading this verse. Non-dual. This Paramatma, Advayaha, and then what is the nature of this Paramatma? Anandaha. Anandaha, also Anantaha. Anantaha, Anandaha, one and the same. Anantaha and Anandaha. Ananta means never ending, limitless. And it is used along with Ananda because the Ananda, we don't know Ananta, we don't know the word never ending. We don't have a concept of limitlessness. We don't have the concept of eternity. Unless it's a teenager telling its parents, I have been waiting for you for an eternity. What took you so long to pick me up? Our eternity is 45 minutes, half an hour, waiting for somebody. So, we don't know eternity. But we do know happiness, ananda, joy. And when we look deeply into this joy, you know what it is? The joy is equal to forever. Because if you ask somebody, how long do you want to be happy? They will think it's a very strange question. What do you mean, how long I want to be happy? How long have you been talking like this? They will ask you in return. I want to be happy for 5 minutes? No. 10 minutes? No. Just today? No. I want to be happy when? Forever. Forever. That's why anything that happens in one's life and one shares the good news with somebody and the other person, especially if they are Indian, they say, is it permanent? I got a job. Is it permanent? I moved into a new home. Is it yours? And you say, yes. Actually, it's not yours. It belongs to the bank. But still you say, it is mine. It's permanent. Rental place is not permanent, impermanent. You can leave any time. It doesn't belong to you. Does it belong to you? Meaning, is it permanent? Even in the fourth marriage, this time it is forever. What about the other 3 times? Shh, don't talk about that now. This is an auspicious occasion. This permanence is what one wants. Therefore, Ananda is equal to Ananta, limitlessness. So, who is this Paramatma? Advayaha Anandaha. Paramatma Dvayanandaha. Very beautiful. The nature of Paramatma is talked about. Not a scary guy in the sky. Please remember, Paramatma is not a guy in the sky, cannot be. And what is this Paramatma? Advayaha, non-separate from me. Anandaha, Anandaha, Ananda Purnaha. Anandaha means it doesn't have joy, is not somebody who is having joy, because again there will be a duality between the possessor and the possessed. Is of the nature of this forever that I want forever. This is what I want, and this is what Paramatma is. So Paramatma is that which is non-dual from me. This Ishvara of Vedanta is non-dual from me and is of the nature of unbridled joy, limitless joy. And why is that? Because the next word will tell us Purnaha. Purnaha means complete and full unto oneself, without lacking anything. What am I as a jiva? Full of lack, lacking everything. Lackluster Jiva. And then who is Ishvara? The one with no lack is Ishvara. No lack at all. Purna, whole. Purna means there is nothing other than Paramatma. There is nothing unlike Paramatma. There is nothing like Paramatma. It's the only thing in the whole universe. That's why Advayaha, Tasmat Advayaha. Because it is Advayaha, it is Purnaha. Because it is Advayaha and Purnaha, it is Ananda Swarupaha. Very beautiful. So this is Paramatma. Oh, I didn't know. Not a guy in the sky? No. Not ready to wreak vengeance? No. Not somebody who is coming to get me? No. It is that which is non-separate from you. Paramatma, in other words, is what you want to be. You are already what you seek to be. So this, the first portion of this, the first pada, Paramatma Dvayanandaha Purnaha. This, up till here, is what is called the Swarupa Lakshana of Brahman. Swarupa Lakshana means the inherent definition of Brahman. Brahman is known by two definitions. One is called the inherent definition, and the other one is a definition that comes and goes. Both the definitions are important to see, as we will understand. So the first definition is the inherent definition, something that it cannot be without. Intrinsic definition. Like, what is the intrinsic definition of fire? That which has heat, that which has light. Fire cannot be without heat or light. Even though they say, oh, there is a cold fire and all, we are not talking of those exceptions. Generally speaking, fire is, what is the definition of fire? That which has heat, that which has light. Without that, there is no possibility of fire. It's an intrinsic definition. And that which has sparks, if we say, it's not intrinsic to the fire. In fact, it is dependent on how wet or dry the wood is, the kindling. The sparks are the property of the kindling, not the property of fire. Sparks come and go, heat and light remain. So similarly for Brahman, we have two definitions. The truth of myself, the truth of the whole universe, that which as though morphs into Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara, which is free of all three. This is what is called the Swarupa Lakshana of Brahman. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. Sat, Chit, Ananda. Or what else? This is what it is. Sat, Chit, Ananda. What is the intrinsic definition here? It exists. Advaya, existence. Its nature is non-dual from anything else. It exists. Sat, Chit, it is conscious. Conscious. And then Ananda, it is limitless. It is Purna. So, and then we can use a few other words also, Advaya and all these things we can say. And this is what it is. Paramatma, this Atma, seen from the standpoint of that which is free of upadhis. What is upadhi? A container, a so-called container, a so-called adjunct. Like even this crystal. Then behind it you put something red object. What do you have? You think the crystal has become red in color, but it hasn't become red in color at all. You don't have red color crystal at all. So then, because then you see the crystal is not red, then you put some white behind it, then you say, oh, a new brahmachari has come to the ashram. Then after that, of course, you have to put orange behind it, and then you can say hello to Swami Kristalananda. Okay? And so like this, these are all various colors which the crystal as though takes on. So these various colors are the upadhi for the crystal, which is free from all upadhis. So similarly here, this the upadhitaha, because of upadhi, there is bheda between jiva and Ishvara, but otherwise there is no bheda at all. Essentially a bheda, and then what? Apparently bheda. Appearance-wise, bheda is there. Otherwise what? What is the reality? Abheda, advaya. So, this is a sentient being that exists and that is full of itself, full of everything else. In fact, there is nothing else other than it. This is Brahman. This is called Swarupa Lakshana. And the same thing I can also arrive at when I, as the jiva, remove all the things that come and go. Body, does it come and go? Yes. Bye-bye. Cognitively, okay? I don't want anybody to have an out-of-body experience. I forbid it. Yeah. Body comes and goes. Cognitively, let go of it. Mind. Oh, it's mostly gone. Okay, cognitively, let go of it. Body, mind, senses, prana, all these things. Cognitively, we discount it. What remains? What remains is sentience, consciousness. I am, that is what remains. Ahankara goes, prana goes, everything goes. All that remains is aham. And similarly, at the total level also, when we say Ishvara, the creator of the universe, what is that? And you remove all the things that do not belong. Do not belong means all the things that come and go. What are the things that come and go? Lord of the universe, goddess of the universe, creator of the universe. That status of creator is only there in relation to the creation. No creation, no status of creator. That one we can cognitively remove. All power, all might, omniscience, omnipotence, all that is a temporary manifestation. That also we can let go. What is it that's upholding this Ishvaratvam, Ishvaraness, Ishvarahood? Sat Chit Ananda. That same thing. The essential nature of Paramatma, the essential nature of Jiva being one and the same, the difference is just based on this upadhi. So having discussed the Swarupa Lakshana, the second portion of the first line talks of Tatastha Lakshana, the definition that comes and goes. This Paramatma, which is Advaya, which is Purna, which is Ananda, what did it do? Swamayaya. Concocted for itself a Shakti, an as though Shakti, called Maya Shakti, all knowledge, all power. Because this consciousness cannot create. It does not do anything. It simply is. It is sentient and it is free of limitations. For this consciousness to create, there has to be a kind of a quickening agent, and that agent is not real, it's a mithya agent, a kalpita shakti. And what is this kalpita shakti? Called Maya. Yama, sa Maya. This Maya is all knowledge. All knowledge, Maya. And then, Swayameva. No, we haven't finished that first line. What is that? Yeah. Purvam Swamayaya. Swayameva Jagad Bhutva. So this Bhagavan, himself, herself, became the Jagat. Because there is no he and she here. He and she are one. That's why we go to any temple, all the Bhagavans, all the manifestation of Bhagavan are happily married. You see that. There is no she and he separate. It's all one. From the standpoint of creation, we say she, because mother, creator, etc. From the standpoint of the intelligence that cannot be extricated from the creation, we say he. That's all. It's all one and the same. So this Bhagavan, Bhagavati included, Swamayaya, with the help of Bhagavati. Who is this Bhagavati? The Shakti. What kind of Shakti? Mithya Bhuta Shakti. Mithya Shakti, a Shakti that is dependent upon Brahman. Because of this Shakti, Swamayaya, Swayameva Jagat Bhutva, quote unquote, became the Jagat. Oh, Bhagavan has become the Jagat. There is no Bhagavan anymore. No, that's why I said as though. Manifested as the Jagat, like even the crystal showing various colors without taking on or becoming red or yellow or white. The crystal did not become any color, and similarly, Bhagavan did not become the Jagat. But Bhagavan, the presence of Bhagavan is there in every part of the Jagat. There is no part of the Jagat without being inhabited and occupied by Bhagavan. That is the idea. How do I understand this? How do I process this? Take, for example, your own dream. You pervade the world of your dreams. You have given yourself a body, and then you have given all your friends a body. Let's say you are sitting in the Vedanta class. Where? In the dream. Dream within a dream. So you're sitting in the Vedanta class in the dream. You have given yourself a body. All your friends also and the classmates have a body. And then what? Teacher also has a body. And then you are, who is this you? You pervade the whole dream Jagat. You have given yourself a body. Who are all your friends sitting next to you? They are all you. You have given them all a body. You pervade their bodies. And who is the teacher? None separate from you. What is the book? Inanimate things are also you. What is the teaching pot? You. What is the teaching crystal? You. It's all you. The whole thing is you. The chairs, the tables, the fan, the light, everything is you. The doors, windows, everything is you. Yet, you did not turn into your dream, did you? If you turned into your dream, you can never wake up. And if the dream was not pervaded by you, when you did wake up, it would be very funny because you would be in your bed along with all the people who attended the retreat. Yeah. And they would be very annoyed. Why did you dream me and bring me here? That doesn't happen. The dream world is wrapped up and you are there. You haven't become the dream world. The dream world is non-separate from you. You pervade the dream world without becoming the dream world. Similarly, Ishvara pervades the entire universe of names and forms. Therefore Advaya, therefore Purna, therefore Ananda. And without becoming anything else. More we'll see when? Tomorrow, because we don't have the 11:15 class. We are all going to go to the yajna there, which is going on. A beautiful transit of Jupiter we are celebrating and praying for there to be good results for everybody, and for parihara. Parihara means for taking away any karma that may be standing in the account also. And then after that we'll go to the Homa hut first, and after the Homa hut we will make our way to the temple where there will be Abhisheka and Puja for Lord Dakshinamurti, and by that time we will be hungry, then we will have our lunch. So we will meet for Bhagavad Gita class in the evening. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. 8 o'clock there will be satsang. And somewhere I think there should be some paper over there.